thing back. Is that recording?
Have you got a disc?
Done.
There?
We're on. It's got a floppy disk.
There you go.
All right, here we go again. All right, so another month's gone. Welcome to Startup Grind Perth. Thank you all for coming. I hope you've all had a drink and met some new friends. We normally go through the values, right? Give first, don't take. You know, make friends, not contacts. And what's the other one? Help others before yourself. Okay. So part of what I said before with Data Science Week in Perth is I wanted to bring somebody in that's kind of come from a data background. Did I get it right this time?
That'll do.
That'll do. Yeah. Really interesting story. So some of you that were here last time with Martin Dugamus from Moodle was about his journey and around how he wanted to keep his business private. And he bootstrapped it for 16 years, 17 years before he's just taken on investment. So trying to bring the data side and a different journey through that's where we reached out to Ian Olson from Pointerra to hear his story as well. So welcome him to
Thank
the...
you.
Oh, not really a stage.
Thanks, everyone.
So first of all, mate, thanks very much
Pleasure, Andy.
for turning up and agreeing to this. So we always start with a bit of background, just to try and understand where people came from, what they did. So over to you.
Yeah, well, I guess there's different themes here. We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about startups, and I guess my early childhood was growing up in a family, a second generation, so I'm the third generation, family businesses. So my life was waking up in the morning and Dad had got up at 3. We owned a news agency and a newspaper round and a bookshop, and so it was just busy. There was no concept of going to work at 8 and coming home at 4, and Mum had a job as well, and so we didn't miss for anything as kids, but it was a very busy household, and I ended up going to uni and doing commerce as a degree, not because I wanted to be an accountant, just that that's what my mates were doing, and that was about as much direction as I had as a 17-year-old. And uni was a bit of a blur. I think I got the Mexican pass, which is the CCC. So I didn't knock the lights out there at all. I was fortunate enough actually to be employed at a firm called Ernst & Winnie, which was one of the precedent firms to EY, by a wonderful man who I'm really good mates with his son, who saw something in me that was way outside the prism of a normal auditor and said, "I'll give you a crack, son." So I became an accountant and then a chartered accountant. I spent some time in the UK working in the banking sector, and got to work for a US bank and got exposed to investment banking, and so really quite a diverse sort of backstory, if you like.
And so you mentioned you went to the UK. Was that almost like a rite of passage?
Absolutely.
That was the thing to be done?
The minute you finish your PY, you hop on a plane to London, because people were earning 25 quid an hour, and that was good coin, and that was a great culture, and met my wife there, or met my now wife here, but we travelled together there, and that's was an amazing place, still is. And London is you can argue the centre, one of the centres of capitalism globally.
Yep.
And so a really stimulating environment, and lots of lessons learned.
And so what made you come back?
Wanting to start a family and wanting to live in this beautiful city. But also knowing that the rest of the world was just 12 hours away or 14 hours away by flight. And my sense is that as West Australians, and a lot of you might have been born here like I was fortunate enough to be, we're travellers, and we're not scared by time zones. And I've got a phone call tonight with the US, and tomorrow morning I've got a phone call with the other side of the US, and so that stuff just doesn't tend to faze Australians, and certainly West Australians, being as remote as we are.
Yep.
It was very much about raising a family in this place, but having tasted working in New York and London, knowing that there should be no boundaries, and that was before the internet. I mean, I came back in 97 or 99, and a mobile phone was something that one of your rich mates had, and the internet was,
or a trade.
Yeah, and the internet was a dial-up modem, right?
Yeah.
So but I've always had I've always been technology minded, and I've always pulled things apart, and so that sort of inquisitive nature probably was one of the elements that prepared me later on for when I met the tech team as part of Pointerra.
So you kind of fell into being an accountant.
Yes.
Right, and you did your professional year, so that PY, I'll fill in the lingo. And you became a chartered accountant, so there'll be there'll be a bit of argument over chartered versus CPA.
Yep.
And,
well, we used to say the CPA guys got theirs off a Wheaties packet. But
I knew it'd dig a response. You end up in the UK, you come back here, and then what do you do?
Well, I joined after Anderson, right?
Yep.
Because they were hiring and they had heaps of work on, and that didn't go so well for Anderson. This little thing called Enron came along, and what will be studied for probably 100 more years is how a global brand can evaporate overnight through the loss of confidence. And whilst it was related to some faraway audit practice with Enron, which was an energy trading company, that brand disappeared. I actually jumped into a small firm called PKF. And very quickly became a partner and managing partner of that business. And so when I was 30 or 31, I was a partner, and that meant an owner of the business. Now I had to borrow money to put to contribute working capital, and so whilst I was still an accountant, I was actually running a business, and with eight partners, so 8 people who I'd only met a year before, and we're all of a sudden jointly and separately liable for all these things that can go wrong when you're selling professional services.
Yeah.
So that was it was a massively steep learning curve.
So you went from, I guess, that accounting side of things into owning an accounting company.
Yep.
And then what?
Well, this is people remember John Howard lost power and lost the unlosable election and should have given it to someone else. And he used this word called hubris, spelled Hubris, and I love it because it's if you know what it means, right? Hubris. 2007, one of my former colleagues is in the room from the business I acquired. Running a chartered accounting firm and being a partner was a 70, 80-hour-a-week job, right? So it was massive. My kids were little, and so we called it driving the bus. You made great money if you had to drive the bus, and you had leverage, so you had some passengers, the managers and staff in the business, but the partner had to be there, client-facing. And I thought to myself, well, I get this professional services firm, but what if I was able to find a professional services firm where I didn't have to do the doing? So I looked around, and my only filter was exposure to mining, oil and gas, and an enterprise value of a certain amount that I thought I could afford to fund. And I found this surveying business. I think I was looking for it. So I acquired that, and this bloke walked into my office 2 days after I bought it, and my partners kicked me out of the accounting firm. Said, Ian, you should go do something else. That's a bit rough.
Didn't quite fit.
No. And he said, Ian, I know you've just bought this business. We need 5 new cars, and we need to buy this thing called a laser scanner. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, do me a business plan. So this 25-year-old kid, and where are you, Stu? You know him because you worked with him. Yeah. Jeff. He wrote me a business plan. I've still got it somewhere at home, and he convinced me to spend $250,000 on a laser scanner. And at that stage, 2007, 2008, that was early stages in 3D data.
Yep.
So this sort of does come to a point at some point.
It's all right.
About Pointerra. And we bought this laser scanner, and we set about trying to sell laser scanning jobs. Laser scanners generate 3D data sets that are used in asset management and engineering and construction. And straight away, and I'd come to work in the morning, and the guys would be sat at a desk processing, and the thing would be in a $250,000 thing would be in the corner, and it's plastic box. And I'm like, guys, why aren't you out scanning? Shh, go away, we've got to process data, we've got 4 computers linked together, don't touch a cord, everything will fall over. So I learned that so I had 10 years in laser scanning or in geospatial, and we grew that business from 20 people to, before oil fell off a cliff in Queensland, and our Queensland business sort of shrunk back a fraction, we had over 100 people. And I was funding that off my own balance sheet. And so there's one thing tonight for people is that if you want to have a crack, you've got to have a crack. And you've got to be prepared to fund it yourself, or if not in its entirety, then certainly to a large extent. If you're also going to ask other people to give you money. And it kind of crept up on you like the frog in the boiling water sort of analogy, and that I didn't expect that I'd be bankrolling payroll for 100 people every 30 days, but the work came and the staff numbers grew, and of course when businesses shrink again, because revenues go away, the costs don't turn off as fast. So that caused, an immense amount of distress, personal financial distress, and that flows back into the household. So it became apparent to me, sort of around 2015, that I probably needed to find someone else to own this business, because I was pretty beaten up. We'd had an amazing run, and Ferris, the surveying business accumulator, was buying businesses, and that was a fortunate meeting. But at right about the same time as they were interested in my business, and I made the classic mistake 2 years prior of turning down an offer that was 4 times what I consequently sold it for. So there's a lesson there in that your first offer is often your best. And they say that with selling a house. It was true with selling a business. But I met there was this about the same time as oil fell off a cliff globally a couple of years after iron ore sort of had its little fallout, and that iron ore contraction that was quite marked caused Rio and BHP to fundamentally reshape their businesses and try and rip costs out. There was this team, this technology team at Rio, and this group of guys had been 10 or 15 in size, and they were called they were part of the next generation mine of the future, and they were charged by Rio to travel the world finding best of breed solutions to manage automation and moving into the driverless train, driverless truck, people off process infrastructure, and they run a lot of that business now out of the remote operations centre at the Perth airport, which ironically my surveying business was actually part of the construction team that built it. The tech team that I now work with were actually created a visualisation environment for the people that operate this incredible equipment from so far away. Sam Walsh came in, and if you weren't on the end of a shovel, you were shown the door. Fortunately, Rio, as a lot of the big companies are, were very, very generous with their redundancy packages, and this group of guys who previously had this role decided to stick together. They all knew each other pretty well. They formed this little business, they built drones, and they tried a bunch of things. One of the guys was a mathematician, and that's Shane Douglas, our CTO. One of the things they weren't allowed to do at Rio was develop, because Tier 1 companies are afraid of development. They like to bolt things together. Don't like seeing too much money torn up on development projects that never come to fruition. So they stuck together for a couple of years and worked on this solution around 3D data, which was principally anchored by the mathematics in the background that Shane has developed and was the original inventor of. About the time I met them, they were starting to run out of cash, and as often happens in life, preparation meets opportunity. So one of the guys was playing sport. His kids were playing sport, standing next to another dad on the sideline. The dad happened to be a stockbroker. Said, "Oh, and the stockbroker loves a deal," and it was when there was a lot of RTOs in the tech space, and so they grabbed the tech team and said, "We'll find you a funding solution." I was asked to look at the technology from a geospatial sector perspective. So, Ian, you own a surveying business. You're involved in 3D data. Does this thing even a thing? Is there a problem? And that's something I'll come back to, which is making sure that a product or is actually a solution to a problem that people will pay you money for, as distinct from something that you think they should pay you money for. I was asked to look at it, and at the same time, and I didn't know what SaaS was. I'm quite technically savvy for an accountant, but I didn't have a clue what SaaS was. At the same time, I met Graham and Rob, who were two of the Nearmap founders. Both are still on our board. Rob's in the room here, he's our chairman. And we'd never met. Graham, sorry. We'd not met before. So the tech team did their prezzo.
I'll fill in the gaps, it's all right.
So the tech team did their prezzo, and they left, and the stockbroker left, and Graham and Rob turned to me and said, "Well, is that a thing?" I said, "Yeah, it's a thing, but how do you make money out of it?" And they sketched out software as a service and what the Nearmap journey had been. And it was pretty much at that meeting that we came up with the business model that, 3 years on, so it was the middle of 15, May of 15, so coming up 3 years ago, is pretty much what we're executing today. We've refined it to call it data as a service, and there's a bunch of other things we're doing, but what I'm pleased to say is that 3 groups of people, the Nearmap guys, myself, and the tech team were brought together through really, circuitous circumstances, but there was a common theme, and it's a theme I like, which is preparation meets opportunity. So everything that's happened to you in your life prepares you for a moment that you can seize or not seize. I was talking to some guys before about being able to seize it. It required sacrifice. If you've got a big old mortgage and drive a flash car on finance and you've got a ton of school fees, people that's a great lifestyle and you've got cash to fund it, that's cool. But if you want to do something different, often I've got mates who can't. They're locked. And they're not unhappy, but they're locked. And so for me it was a time of a fair bit of change in my life, because I was looking at selling the business and actually deleveraging personally and entering a phase in our life where the kids weren't, apart from school fees, weren't as expensive. And really, I look back now, and they're still expensive.
He just slides it.
I think the preparation meets opportunity one is a really important theme. The challenge is knowing when the opportunity is presenting, A, because that's not always apparent, and B, having the courage to take the leap. Because if you don't, I don't care what people think about what we're building at Pointerra and what I personally achieve. It's about what I feel. And I think one of the things that I like to talk to entrepreneurs about, and I don't even know what makes an entrepreneur, mate, I really don't know, is that if you can figure, and I say this to my kids, it's easy to advise to give your kids, figure out what your passion is and do it and make money out of it. I was a sailor, quite a successful young sailor, and that's what I wanted to do. And Dad said, mate, you can't make money out of that crap. You've got to go to uni and do commerce. And then if you want to, and of course, you couldn't make money out of sailing at the time, and the world's changed there. But if an opportunity presents itself and you think it's what really floats your boat, what really, that's what I really want to do, and there are constraints, that's the time when you've really got to look in the mirror and go, how do I remove those constraints, and how quickly can I do that, because I want to take that opportunity. For me with Pointerra, it was about a business that I saw principally through understanding SaaS and the scalability of it with Rob and Graham's assistance, was that we could grow a global business. We have an incredibly small cost base. We're doing something that's a bit different. It's analogous to Nearmap in that it deals with data at scale, but it doesn't involve, it's a fundamentally different model, because it involves 3D data, not imagery, but it also doesn't involve owning the capture process. So we can open an office in Uzbekistan without needing to go and fly planes or capture data. So we have a different way of engaging with our and purposely designed so that if we were able to execute, we could scale. And for me, there's a big difference between the ability to do, or creating a business model that gives you the ability to do something and then doing it. And right now, and for the last 12 months, we've been in execution phase with our business. So when I talk to the investors, it's not about having a sales pipeline or, does the market is the market going to pay money for your solution, or have you got a solution, and are you solving a problem? We got those questions answered a long time ago. Now it's about actually executing on sales. And so another theme for me is you're always selling. Most of us are in personal relationships. A lot of us have got kids. Every day, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, you're actually selling. You're actually selling. I'm selling right now to you. I'm selling to you guys. But if you can take that higher level view of what it means to be a salesperson, it's not selling. At some point, became a dirty word. And I've learned a huge amount from Graham, who was selling hardware, really hard hardware to sell in North America in the 1990s, and has come to us with 30 years of sales experience. So, the penny dropped sometime in the journey of the last 3 years that actually life is about selling. It's not always a product. Sometimes it's your relationship or what you want to do, or permission to come here tonight and not be home. So that's the other thing is don't be afraid of selling. And in my business, my role as CEO is actually to support the sales guys and the tech guys. If there was one thing I wanted to do differently in Pointerra, it was to rip structure apart and just say, we know what the goal is. My job is to facilitate. I've got all these things I've got to do, like compliance and investor relations, and they're all important. But my principal role is supporting the tech team to be excellent in their role, and the sales guys to execute. And it's not to have them report to me and to set rules and boundaries. It's, mate, whatever you need, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
If you can turn, as a leader in an early stage business, that mindset's so important. Yeah, okay, any pet talk?
You can.
Yeah. Sure. People ask me about.
Can I go and sit down there?
People ask me about you raised $5 million, and do you think you'll need more? And I actually got the guys I see in the US, where they have a fundamentally different VC world, where you have your little angel piece and your Series A and B and C. The funds are so big now that they have to deploy so much money that these valuations are kind of created as a way of, in a private sense, of no one losing money, because Series A was done at 100 mil EV and Series B at 500. They're all arbitrary, right? That's a confidence thing. The big issue, though, is that the amount of money that gets deployed is significant, 10, 20, 50 mil. If you're a software business, there's no gear to buy. So what do you spend the money on? People and advertising. The advertising bit, I get, but people bit, these guys who were entrepreneurial and agile and nimble and worked in a small team and bootstrapped it, all of a sudden are trying to deploy 10, 20, $40 million. You do that, you've got to hire hundreds and hundreds of people. And you get to the point where you're not actually running an agile startup, you're actually running an HR business, or you've got this HR function. And there are guys I know running medium-sized technology businesses that say that easily 40 to 50% of my time's on HR, and the rest is on strategy and IR. So in my business, HR is 1%, strategy is 60%, IR is 30 or 29.
Yep.
Or 39.
So can I ask?
Sorry.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
You've got to ask for permission. What is it? Preparation meets opportunity.
Preparation meets opportunity.
He's having a drink, so I'm going to ask a question.
That's all right.
No, have a drink.
That's all right.
No, really, have a drink.
I'll have one of these.
Yeah. So the last startup grind we did was with Martin Dugamus from Moodle. Kept the business private and bootstrapped for 16, 17 years.
Yes.
And it was really interesting to hear his journey and the reason behind why he did that.
Yep.
I'm really keen to understand with your finance background and your accounting and everything else. I'm guessing you're not really an accountant by now anyway.
Never probably was.
How did you find the whole capital raising on the market and the process you went through and the decisions you made to kind of get you to the point where you are now? Good, bad, and indifferent.
Well, I love the you can't unscramble the egg analogy. And when we were introduced to the tech team, they kind of pretty much settled on a kind of term sheet to do an RTO with this broker. Now we could have actually grabbed it, and there are times during the RTO process that I wish we had, and just pinched the deal literally, because the guys were looking for leadership. They knew that the finance people were after what finance people do, which is generate a fee, get the transaction away. And so there was a certain degree of doing the right thing. But as a person with probably 15 to 18 years of experience taking companies public, and in Australia that typically tends to be from going public before you're ready, because we don't have that that VC community, and so the ASX has become a proxy for early stage investment. That didn't scare me at all, and the thought of going through, I'd done RTOs, I'd done recapitalisations as an advisor, so being in the hot seat wasn't a threat, wasn't something I was concerned about, and indeed it meant that there was a whole bunch of things we didn't have to outsource because I could do it. That said, it coincided with ASIC cracking down on RTOs, and the process was tortuous. But that said, most significant capital raising events are, whether you're going public or whether you're raising a big lick of money from the investment community, particularly if there's an intermediary involved, it's a tortuous process. And one part of me thinks it shouldn't be, another part thinks that it's actually a great filter for making sure you're actually serious about having a crack at it. So would I do the RTO again? Don't know, but we did. So I'm not a believer in looking back and saying I would have done that differently, because I believe in focusing every energy I've got, every piece of energy I've got, not over what I said 2 minutes ago, but what I'm about to say. And so certainly for us at the time, RTOs were the easy way to go, or the path of least resistance. We set out to raise between $3.5 and $5 million through an underwritten offer, and we got, I think think we raised well north of 5, so I had to hand some back and scale people back. So we got our full amount, and it was, we listed on the 12th of July 2016, and we started the process in January of 15. It took a year and a half. No, actually we signed the term sheet in September of 15, so it took nearly 18 months.
Yeah.
It was long, and we had 2 supplementary prospectuses, and that was around ASIC looking at the word patents pending and patents applied for, and really, like, you're talking real lawyery stuff. And so that was unfortunate, but that's the way public life rolls. So no fear, but it was certainly a pretty arduous process.
Yeah. And did you find something you mentioned before around the scale of capital that's deployed in places like the States?
Yep.
And all of a sudden you get this influx, and you to spend the money, you basically got to employ a bunch of people. Did you find a little bit about that when the money came in as well? And I'm keen to understand the focus on something else you said before, which was around you've got to find the problem that you're trying to solve. Right, and then how do you go about that when you've got a bunch of cash in the bank?
So the very reason I'm sitting here was that someone reached out, the broker reached out and said, "Oh, so you own the surveying business, don't you? Yeah, do you know what 3D data is? Yeah, can you come and meet these guys?" So that was the preparation meets opportunity. I went and met them. My role was actually to give my opinion to the broker on whether there was actually that was a problem. 3D data was a problem. I actually thought it was, and then I met Graham and Rob and got so intrigued that I actually said I'd like to be involved. The tech team were looking for a business model and some commercial capability. They're an extraordinary gifted, and they've got a 10+ year track record of delivering solutions for a tier 1 miner that are relied upon today. So I kind of felt that and they were quite a mature model. We're not a young techie firm. It's a little bit boring in that respect. But I've lost my train of thought now. What was your question?
He suffers from my issue.
I went down.
So as an add-on to it, when the money came in.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Did you find yourself going?
No.
We just need to bolt people on, or we need to focus on what we're trying to solve?
Because I've grown businesses from 20 to 100, and seen what happens, and the good and the bad. What we did do very quickly was we had a view on where we thought the customers would come from, and as is often the case, we got that wrong. But ironically, we've actually ended up there, and that was at the enterprise end of town. So we've kind of tried to grow the business. Pointerra sits in the knot of the bow tie between people that create 3D data and people that use it. And our vision from the get-go was to, rather than trying to create the data, was actually create a mechanism to allow the people that create it to more easily put it in the hands of people that use it. And so that's been that's been the conduit through which, or the prism through which we've looked. So hiring more tech guys wasn't required, because you look at this group of people and you know they're capable and competent. They're a mature bunch of guys who've been doing this thing for 20 years. They put their hand up when they need more resource. And when you're a SaaS business, and I can do most of the corporate stuff, you know we don't have there's no people, we don't have sort of support people. It's me, the tech team, and the sales guys. So the add-on was salespeople. And indeed, when we, the capital market is a strange beast, and for different reasons, share prices move up and they move down. But when they move up, people want to throw money at them. And we were fortunate late last year when our share price, off the back of some little mini wins we were having in commercialising the business, our share price moved a bit, and I was, a lot of people saying, you need to raise money, Well, if I raise it now, I'll have to go and hire 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 sales guys. Yeah, that's it. Do that, because then you'll grow sales. We said no because I didn't want to have to find 6 or 7 or 8 people and deploy them and train them and then manage them and manage their sales process when we have this thing called a quarterly. So every 90 days we have to bear our soul to the market and say what we did and didn't do. And the quarterly is it's a derivative of the Junior Explorer end of town, where you actually have to report your cash position. And it's designed to ensure investors know where you're going if you're slowly diminishing your pile of cash. When you're trying to grow a business that generates and generates revenue and wants to generate more, the cash flow can be a blunt instrument because it ignores accounting concepts like accruals and accounts receivable and all that sort of stuff. But we have what we have. You know, we're a function of the environment we're in. So I also don't have the bandwidth to be bringing on lots and lots of salespeople and then having us miss what the market is expecting from a sales growth perspective on a quarter-by-quarter basis if we're not actually out there closing deals. So what we're trying to do is grow as quickly as we can, but in a really measured way, without throwing huge amounts of people at it. Now, if I find the right people, and we haven't knocked, I think we haven't knocked it out of the park there. You make mistakes. I think something Kate said to me before, which is a great saying, which is, what was it? Fail quickly. Yeah. So from a sales perspective, you know what I've learned is you know really quickly if someone's going to succeed or not. And building the sales pipeline at the front end is easy. Converting it is the hard bit. And we've had 2 guys over the past 12 months that haven't worked out, and they're great guys, and for different reasons. When you're selling something, it's best described like this. In the 3D capture space, you've got people selling Holdens and Fords and Mazdas and Toyotas, and so they compete on service and all the good things you do when you're in a competitive landscape. We're kind of selling something that's a bit esoteric. The pricing that we chase principally is structured around the demonstration of value, so ROI. So if I want you to give me $1 a month, I want to show you and have you agree that I'm delivering $5 to $10 a month in value. So if we get into a price conversation saying the dollar's expensive, mate, oh no, $1. That's a hard conversation for me to come back with. But if I spent time with you and you're convincing you that I'm generating you $5 to $10 a month in value, and I say, by the way, that's $1, you're like, damn, where do I sign? And turn that into an enterprise sale. I'm now helping you fill out your internal business case and sell that to your stakeholders. And we've already got an agreed state. So finding people at an enterprise sales level. So we're after $500 customers and $1,000 a month customers, but we're also after 10 and 20 and 50K a month customers. All of them are important to the growth of our business, and which will lead me into talking about $1 billion business. All of them are important, and it's not one or the other. But to do an enterprise sale, which is and getting a few of those behind us significantly de-risks the business from a cash flow and earnings perspective, and a reliance on external capital. But the type of person that can articulate a value proposition and get an agreed state at the right level with stakeholders is a very different person to someone who can prospect and build a sales pipeline.
And so I won't let my own personal judgments get in here. But
please do.
No, because I've been there in that same place as well, right? So there are lots of different types of salespeople, and you have to really try those different you're trying to do.
Correct.
And sometimes there is a different sell.
We've hired a guy.
So there is a $500 to $1,000 a month business, but then there's the big long-term corporate sell, which is the relationship sell as well. And
a deep domain knowledge. Whereas we've hired a guy in Sydney who's older than me, come from a career in selling telco solutions to SMEs, who picked the phone. He happens to be a shareholder. He picked the phone and said, "Ian, $500 to $1,000 a month to the surveyors and the drone guys. I reckon I can do this. What you know? You're looking for that?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, Jones, we are." He said, "What sort of territory?" And I said, "All the world." It's inside sales. You know, there's this thing called LinkedIn and Twitter, and we're pretty good at that. And we project. We spend a lot of time creating our Twitter profile and more recently LinkedIn, and that allows us, and that was a whole separate exercise and project, but that's allowed us to talk to our, in a B2B sense, in the space we play, and that's where people talk about what they're doing. And in any technology adoption curve, you've got the early adopters, the rump and the laggards. It's the early adopters who are saying, "Hey, look at me in Twitter and LinkedIn." They're also the people who are prepared to pay you. So for inside sales, chasing people at that, sub $1,000 a month subscription, where you're typically talking to the owner of the business, talking to my 37 or 8-year-old person who just bought a laser scanner, and someone comes in and says, "Mate, for $500 a month, I'll get those guys off that desk and out there selling more 3D capture." That's this guy's walked into our business as of a few months ago with no experience in geospatial, and yet he's already because he knows how to sell to the SME. Very different guy to the person who closes, or who we hope to close 50 grand a month deals in North America to big utilities, where he's got deep domain knowledge and, you know, he's got 30 years in the sector.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So one of the things that you mentioned is, and we promoted it
Yes,
as well.
So that was a mistake, by the way, and so I'm not going to cop that. Because you said that I sent you a profile.
No, it was
that said that I'd built $1 billion business.
Yes.
So people have been howling at you, saying Ian's misrepresenting.
Yeah. And I changed the wording to building.
But
I think it's good, right? So one of the things is that
check the market cap.
So
We're trending.
Spot the salesperson.
Yeah, we're trending towards $1 billion.
So I think it's important to have this big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And I think one of the things about the grammar and everything else, you know, take that aside, you've got like a massive goal to grow $1 billion business from Perth.
Yeah. And so people might say, well, how do you even come to a number like that? And it's easy. For me, it's $100 million in revenue. The enterprise value of a high growth SaaS business is 10 times revenue.
Yep.
So how do I get to 100 mil? Well, I need a certain amount a month. And when do I need that by? I probably need that somewhere between 5 and 7 years from now.
Yep.
And so we just simply work back to today and say, what are we going to do today?
Yep.
Well, I've got to start signing people paying me 10, 20, 50K a month, right, in North American utilities. And then I need to do that in roads, then I need to do that in rail, and then I need to do that in pipelines, and then I need to do that in architecture, engineering, construction, and then I need to do that in all the surveyors, the people that create data. And then we'll have the world's biggest pile of 3D data, and we can do this thing called a data marketplace, where we think we can be the Getty images for 3D data. People will come and acquire, instead of ringing Stu and getting his really cool team to go and do very high value 3D capture, they might come and look at our site and say, oh, I can actually, that'll do, I'll buy that on the spot. Now we thought that would come down the track, and like a couple of years down the track, earlier this year, a Perth-based business called Total Earth Solutions called me up and said, Ian, we'd like to fly the Perth LGA, Perth local government area, and we'll do that at our cost, and we'd like to sell it on your platform and do a revenue share with you. I said, mate, has someone put you up to this? Because you're kind of describing what one of our future states was. And that's where we turn ourselves into a mini near map without owning, for 3D data, without owning the capture process. So I want to be able to go into the market, find a partner who, instead of marketing his capture business, be it a drone or a mobile laser scanner or some other, one of the myriad sensor formats that there are, who says, I want to break that model and I want to own the data and sell access to it on a subscription model, and we'll use Pointerra as a platform. So that's come ahead of where we thought it was, and that's a key plank of our business. So we've got the capture community paying us to host data, solve basic workflow problems. That same capture community going, I can actually own data and sell it to my customer on demand rather than waiting for the customer to ring me up and answer a quote and compete with that guy and that guy. So we've got a few layers to the business model, and we're one of the challenges with doing anything is doing a whole bunch of things not very well. So you've got to, in my mind, you've got to have enough balls, enough optionality that you don't say, I'm going to completely focus on this one thing because I've got deep conviction on it. And I reckon that can work in a lot of cases. We're going out into the world selling a solution to this big problem, but no one was really doing what we're doing. So we said, well, we think that'll work, and we think that'll work. So we've had to go at a few of them. And there is a danger in not doing anything well and actually sitting back and going, oh shit, we spent all that money, but we're kind of not there. So we're trying to keep that optionality, but also be very focused on running a lean business and identifying the low-hanging fruit, and that is the utility space for us. We've got a regulated, all over the Western world, you've got governments regulating that utilities must do aerial capture at least annually to deal with a whole bunch of environmental and bushfire risk in certain parts of the world, and a lot of them are privately owned now, so they're subject to economic regulators who who govern what they can charge as tariffs, trying to keep them honest, keep the multinationals honest, so you and I don't get a surprise in our letterbox with our electricity bill. So there's a lot of reasons why this aerial capture of 3D, not photos, is a very big and mature business globally, and nowhere more so than Western Europe and North America, where you've got 300 odd million people crammed into a country the size of Australia. The use of 3D data in that market is baked in, and to a degree that we could only dream about. So again, that's where our focus needs to be if we're going to create $1 billion business. And how do we do that? We get $100 million in revenue. And how do you do that? You do the maths. $8 million a month, right? And that's US. So, and how do you do that? You just break it down and say, how many enterprise customers do I need? And what are the verticals? And we attack each vertical one at a time and get the model right, and then translate the learnings from that into the next vertical.
But that almost seems like you're building a proper business.
Imagine that.
Right? Wouldn't it be easier, right, just to raise more money at a higher valuation? Wouldn't that be quicker to get you there?
Yeah, but the great thing about being public is that the valuation, your value is determined daily by the market, and Mr. Market is a strange beast. He overshoots or she overshoots on the upside and undershoots on the downside, right? Everyone's seen that. So we're not in this VC world where we can agree with our existing partners that we'll go out for a next round and we'll peg it at, 50% premium to the last round because everyone's comfortable and it seems like we're moving in the right direction. There's all this weight of money trying to find a home. So we scrambled the egg, and the egg was going public. Right? We ran out to a bunch of investors and said, we think $5 million is enough to execute our business model. And I'm pretty keen to make sure we stick to that. We've got some options that will be exercised in the next 15 months that will provide some more working capital. And one of the when you're dealing with other people's money, one of the big problems I've seen, and other people's money is being particularly in the public market, is the ability for a management team and a board to go, we'll just go back to the market, get more money, and all of a sudden you've got 100 billion shares on issue, and your share price is where it is, because you keep going back and you lose credibility, and then you're raising money from a less sophisticated group each time. So, when I put my IR hat on, it's about making sure I've got a register of strong hands, that I communicate regularly with the big holders, but also when Mrs. Smith from Proserpine in Queensland or wherever that is rings me up and says, and this is really hard when you've been through an RTO, I put $5,000 into that company 10 years ago, and she's gone from having 5,000 shares to 20 because this thing's been reconstructed 3 times, and she wants to know for Centrelink what her holdings were. And I said, well, 20 shares times 8 cents, that's not a lot. What happened to my money? So I'm a believer that that person's due 5 minutes of my time, or as long as it takes, just like the guy who wrote a $400,000 cheque, or the institutional fund that's put money into our business. Just not because, just because it's the right thing to do, right? And as part of being being a good citizen as a public company, that people, shareholders have, ultimately, whether or not they put money in or report shares on the market, everyone's got that's part of, if you choose that route, that's what you end up with. There's all these different people ring you. Flip side, you raise money from friends or family or from a VC fund, and you have one lady or man who can make your life hell on their own in a different way. And that's why I'm a believer that there's no right answer. I don't believe Australia's model is right or wrong. It just works for us. I don't believe the American market is right or wrong. I think wherever you based your business and you choose to raise capital, you kind of go with the way the market works, and you have to make it work. And cut your cloth to suit.
No, that's cool. Can I bring you back to something?
Sure.
Right. So I think one of the things that a lot of startups, scale-ups, whatever you want to call them, do, is they don't focus on sales. They focus on marketing. And you've been very, very specific around how hard it is to find salespeople, how you need to break down your massive goal into getting revenue in each month as well. How undervalued do you think having someone in every startup that can actually sell and generate revenue?
The most important thing in the business. Because you can have the smartest people in the world who've nailed the world's biggest problem, but if you can't turn that into a value proposition, it all comes down to value. I want to be out till 9 o'clock tonight. and my negotiation with my dear wife was, you know, what I wasn't able to do tonight that she wanted me to do. So that was a sell, right? It is the most. I knew nothing about sales compared to what I've learned over the last few years, particularly through Graham and Rob and the experience they brought from the new atmosphere. I had no idea. I thought I did. I was running home this surveying business. I was a chartered accountant selling IPO services, and that was very much on relationships. This is a very technical solution. Often software, be it widgets or hardware or software, technology solutions are very technical. So you're selling to a highly cynical buyer who can actually white out your complete proposition if you can't convince them. When you then go to the guy who's got the checkbook and say, well, now I need X grand a month, an old mate over here goes, oh, that's bullshit. The technology doesn't work, or we don't have that problem. If you can't figure out how to navigate that journey, you've got no hope. So, as important, like it's almost the most important thing is the ability to sell, and selling is about value and demonstrating value.
Yeah.
And that can be a simple conversation with the business owner when you're saying, mate, I'll save you 5 hours a day. That's per person. There's 2 of them doing that. That's 10 hours a day. He does the massive. Like, crap, that's 15 grand a year. Right. I want $500 a month. So I'm giving you 2 times ROI. Okay, that's good. And if my building burns down or floods, my data's safe, and I'm not having to buy hard drives each year. So we try and build, in addition to some of the basic ROIs on workflow, we try and build value propositions around risk management and CapEx to OpEx, not having to spend money on enterprise storage. I mean, that's a very Pointerra focused angle, but you got to look for value everywhere because some people put a bigger price on one item as compared to another that you're selling. Some people gravitate to the workflow piece and say, look at all the time they're saving. The other guy goes, mate, I'm just glad I don't have to buy hard drives anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so it's obviously, number one thing, it's important, it's all those kind of things. Do you see yourself as a salesperson?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
First and foremost. Actually, no. Secondly, because my first job is to support the tech team and the sales team. And after that, it's selling. So a massive personal learning journey in selling, and actually figuring out that we do it every day in everything we do. Life's about negotiation, and if you I don't. There's some great stuff out there on YouTube and LinkedIn, and some of the guys find what I've found is there's so much material you can consume now. In the olden days, you had to buy a book on selling.
The olden days.
The olden days. My dad was a salesman, right? He had these books, Jim Collins, good and great. All these really cool books. Everyone's read that stuff, right? Now there's just everyone's a influencer. My daughter wants to be a bloody Instagram influencer on bikinis, right?
Yep.
Go figure. So you can get.
She get that from you?
No. So I guess what I've learned in the last few years, particularly through social and for us, B2B social, Twitter and LinkedIn, is there's someone out there that captures your attention. And there's this one particular guy that I really resonate with. His name's Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. There's some nodding faces out there. Whoever you, sometimes when I've had a crap day or something, his videos last 20 seconds, and he just reframes your thought process, and he basically says, dude, if it's not working, it's not Andy's fault, it's not someone out here who's not bought it, it's not the bloke who dumped 500,000 shares who took your share price down, it's you. Don't blame your shit on anyone else, it's you. And I, for him, I only found him 3 or 4 months ago, but he really resonates with me.
Yep.
And when I need reframing or resetting, I watch 20 seconds or a minute of Gary V. And he had, he's created this business where people pay him to work for him so they can learn off him. Bizarre.
Yep.
But yeah, he works for me. So find out who works for you. So it doesn't need to be an influencer in social media. It might be a mate or a spouse or a parental.
Yep.
Or your kids.
Yep. So on that, like learning from your kids, right? And I guess one of the things that drives me is as my kids are getting older, so they've got the option and the knowledge and everything else that kind of they can tap into
Yeah.
as well. Where do you think, what are the top 3 things you're going to learn over the next few years that you can feed back to people kind of, maybe starting out on this entrepreneurial journey as well? That might be accountants.
Don't think you need a uni degree.
Yep.
I think tertiary education is a broken model.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've nearly figured that out in Australia. I think Steve Wozniak has in the US. He's one of the Apple founders. He's set up WazU. Student debt in the US is a massive problem. My university degree was free. It was on a different balance sheet, or a different part of the government's balance sheet. The kids today, my daughter wants to do medicine. She's going to come out of 6 or 7 years of uni with 100k plus debt. If someone buys Pointerra for a ridiculous sum, I might be able to lend her the money. But my really close group of friends, and I'm off to Rottnest on the weekend for a 50th, combined 50th, so I turned 50 this year, with a bunch of my really tightest mates from uni. So we've been mates since we were teenagers. And the 2 wealthiest guys in our group, one's a painter and one's a plasterer. So go figure. And why? Because, not because they're tradespeople, because they were entrepreneurs who got involved in a trade and figured out how to actually corral and get leverage and grow a business, right? And there are investment bankers in that group, and there are all sorts of people. It's a very mixed group. So my message to my kids, if that was the question, is don't think you've got to go to uni because everyone's doing it. And I know that when you leave school at 17 or 18, as it is now, some of you knew what you wanted to do when you were 12. Some of you will take till you're 40 to figure it out. I took a long, long time. And everyone's journey is different.
Yep.
But one of the points that I tried to identify at the start of this talk was making sure you've got enough, that you give yourself enough oxygen and enough bandwidth to know when that opportunity presents. And if it does, because I reckon I probably saw a bunch of opportunities and I ignored them, or I wasn't smart enough, or I wasn't prepared for them.
Yep.
But when preparation meets opportunity, just figure out a way to grab it, because Gary V, when you're 90 in the nursing home, you won't give a rat's about how much you made, but it was about the things you didn't do that you could have done, and that includes spending time with your family.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the reasons I got out of the accounting firm was that my kids were really little. I just wasn't seeing them. So, in a peak of pre-GFC hubris, I thought I'll go and buy a professional services firm, and the other guys will make money for me, and I'll see my kids. It doesn't quite work like that. But I did see my kids more.
Good.
I did see my kids more.
Excellent. Mate, I've loved hearing your story. Very honest story. I think it's been fantastic. So if you can give Ian a little round of applause. Has anyone got any questions?
Got to be. Tons of unanswered questions. Yes.
I guess my background is professional services as well, and
yes,
every deal almost seemed different. Every contract seemed to run weekly.
Yes.
To a point. One of the reasons I started a SaaS business because I wanted to sell product, and it was the same.
Yep.
We have 20, 30, 40 clients, but really still at that point, our clients are probably 40, 50% the same.
Yep.
Still unique. Are you still finding that in Pointerra? I mean, at what year do you think they'll start becoming stock standard?
Yeah, well, I think it's called network effect, and I hope it bloody happens in a hurry. But at some point, apparently, the bloke next door goes, he's bought that, I'll buy that, right? That's network effect. But you've got to do the yards to get there. And so Gary V, and you chuckled so you know what I'm talking about, hustle. You've just literally, you're young, you're healthy, you're in a good spot. I mean, your health's your most important asset. If you don't have your health, everything else is so you. And there have been periods, and I'm not exactly a specimen right now of fitness, but your physical health and your mental health are the most important things. If you can't do that, you can't look after your second most important asset, that's your family. And then your third most important asset is your friends. So health, family, friends. Business comes fourth for me. And yet we all need it. The reason we're sitting here is principally because of business. You've got to have these sorted. and I actually haven't, I've gone completely off topic, but the answer to it is you're just going to keep hustling, and sell more to the guys that are the same. Hey, the cookie cutter thing. Hey, this guy's bought it, you should buy it too, right? That's network effect, or it's the beginning of network effect. The other time is exploring, and that's when I do all my worst work, according to my wife, which is on the iPad, on Twitter and LinkedIn, exploring and meeting and reaching out to people. And you've got to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of that. And if it's not you, then it doesn't have to be, but it has to be someone. Now, one of the biggest mistakes you can make on that hustle thing is giving that job to a young person because they're tech savvy, or an intern. I do all our social, and I always ask the guys for content, but I do it all because I reckon I've got to own it at this point. At some point, someone else can own it, but right now, because to me, it's about the DNA of who we are. So I'm really careful about what I say on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I try and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and it's not. There's this. You can't use those platforms to promote. You have to share and educate and then promote. Right? There's this etiquette that's kind of unwritten, but everyone in this room knows intuitively what it is to be part of that community. And yet you've also, ultimately everyone knows what they want, so they're all playing the game, and all they want is a sale. So you're not doing it in a disingenuous manner, but you are. It is just the most amazing tool. Imagine trying to explain to someone 50 years ago that you could lie on your bed on this little thing called a tablet at night and actually reach out to the whole world. And that to me, whenever I have something doesn't go right, I either watch 30 seconds of a mate to G me up, or I go, bugger it, I'm just going to focus on growing the network and growing the pipeline. And then I do that for a while, and then I come back, okay, I've got to do the hard bit, I've got to do the execution, I've got to get in and find out what that guy hasn't accepted my proposal yet, what the pushback was, did we articulate the ROI enough for them, and you just build up a knowledge base that the next biggest challenge is to replicate that in the person next to you and the person next to them. That I see as one of our biggest growth impediments, is trying to take everything that I think I've got, which is far from perfect, and trying to get Andy to do it for me when I'm not there. And that, to me, that's why I'd rather hire one sales guy at a time and make sure I've got the right person and get them on a good footing before I go and hire 10 at a time and end up with 8 mistakes, which will set you back a year. I don't know if that helped. Sorry.
I was just going to ask you about key man/woman.
Yeah, we've got it.
Yeah.
We've got key man on Shane.
How long will you go with you sort of holding all of that in your head?
Oh, as little as time as possible.
What do you do to offset it, or to
talk and don't own? Everyone thinks power is control. Control is power. In hierarchical businesses and that we've all seen or worked in, the way to move yourself forward was to control information and information flow. If you're trying to rapidly grow a business, you actually need to do the exact opposite, which is share everything. So there are no, in our business, everyone knows everything. So the file server, well, everything's in the cloud, but everyone can look at everything. And when I get off the phone and there's a crap result, Shell, give me grief, or we talk about it. And the tech guys aren't necessarily, that's not their thing, but I really try very hard to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. And I believe in, if it's good news, write me an email or a letter. If it's bad news, pick me up, pick the phone up. So no surprises. 3 rules in business: complete transparency. No surprises, complete transparency, and no dickheads. The last one's a bit crude. The Americans kind of wince at it. Australians know what it means, right? People break businesses. Businesses don't break businesses. People do. So if you get dickheads in your business, they will undermine good things. So you have to hire the right people, but you have to have this culture of transparency and no surprises. And if you can do that, and make what's going on completely transparent to everyone, you don't have this cancer which is, oh, he's this and she's that, and I don't, he can see that but not this. There's people, we're smart people, everyone can figure that stuff out. So there are some things that we need, that said that, are personal, and there are some rules that we have to adhere to around private information around individuals, but by and large, I like to run the business as openly as I can, and I also believe that no one's got the mortgage on the right idea. So if I'm trying to do something on sales, I like to talk in the open plan. We're in an open plan like this, and I'll walk around and the guys put their headphones in and bugger off Ian. But what I want is I want to hang up once and have one of them go, you got that bit wrong. Not hide myself away somewhere and think I'm omnipotent, I know the answers. I want that one time to someone to say, yeah, it's not really my thing, but that thing you said there. And I do the same with the tech guys. I hear them talking. I go, yeah, no, I don't know about that. And they're like, bugger off. You know, nothing about anything that we're talking about. But we've tried to create that culture. So to be really specific to your question, I want to disseminate everything as quickly as possible, because that's the only way that you lift. You know, we want to lift everyone, not create this, because this doesn't create value. This just creates resistance. So we want to be this flat thing. So head of people and culture. Does anyone even know what that is? That makes me feel claustrophobic and tight in the chest. When I was a young bloke, it was called HR, and we used to laugh and call it human remains. And prior to that, it was called personnel. You know, the army calls it personnel, right? But head of people and culture. I actually even think that the fact that we've had to label that is a big problem in the millennial and I've got millennial kids, I think, and other things. So yeah, I don't like that stuff. And there is some things I'm trying to do differently in Pointerra than what I've experienced in my working life.
Anyone else?
Yes, Kate.
So I love this concept of trying to do a visibility build business.
Yes.
Breaking it down to what you need to do today. I think
Yes.
Something we can all kind of take
Yep.
away and talk tonight. So I guess the question that I have is, we're losing so many amazing tech businesses all over East, global. We've lost the near maps, we've lost the canvas.
Yep.
From a Perth perspective, so can you build this business in Perth? What are the challenges?
Yeah.
What are the opportunities?
So to the extent that you need humans in a space, the type of tech guys I need to hire, you've all heard of things being rarer than unicorns. Well, there's something rarer than unicorns, and that's unicorn excrement. And so finding a... Sorry, I didn't swear.
You've done very it. No, I said you
but
did swear.
there are things that you do need to put people, I believe you need a critical mass of creative thought in one place. And so we hired a guy recently who had 10 years at Nearmap, and he was rarer than that unicorn product, given that unicorns are pretty rare. And it was there were 5 people that wanted him. He'd moved back from Sydney, was under some pressure to move to Sydney and didn't want to, and so we were really fortunate to end up with him. That said, the fact that we're connected by devices, and I think is the reason why you can do what we're doing from Perth. When I go to the US, the biggest surprise to me was actually how many people, particularly the sales guys, work from home. Work for massive corporates. Why do they work from home? Not because they don't have a flash office downtown. They were losing 2 to 3 hours a day commuting, sitting in a car or on public transport. And so in the US, particularly in SaaS and in the geospatial sector, really mature approach. They had this thing called unlimited paid time off. So I'm trying to hire this guy, and he goes, Ian, I need unlimited PTO. I said, dude, that's not even a thing. And he goes, yeah, it is. And I said, well, look, we have 4 weeks. The Poms have 6. I know you guys only have 2, but unlimited PTO. He goes, yeah, but I seek approval. And this is completely off topic, but we speak English like the Yanks, right? But they don't. We think you say something to an American and they nod, but they actually don't hear what you're saying. So why unlimited PTO? Does anyone know why they do unlimited PTO?
Because no one takes 4 weeks off.
Not so much that. There's always $1 in it in America. If you give someone unlimited PTO, it doesn't accrue. So all those balance sheet liabilities for employee entitlements are gone. So unlimited PTO, use it or lose it. And I said, okay, that makes sense. I like the sound of that. Don't have that. And I said, but what if you want 8 weeks? He goes, it just doesn't happen. People in the US don't take time off because they're worried that when they take time off, they'll lose their job. So go figure. I can't even remember what the question was.
Can you work
yes. Because of technology, because of all these amazing tools that we have, and we still, that said, there's a few things we haven't sorted. One is airflow and air conditioning in buildings. That's got me stuffed. The second one is a teleconferencing solution that works. WebEx, blah, 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 blah. None of them work. Guaranteed, the first 20 minutes there's some YouTube stuff.
Especially if it's relational to the amount of people that are
Yes.
in the room, right, as to how long the outage
Correct.
is before you actually get it going.
Yeah,
as well.
and you've seen it. There's these bloody jokes online where you can actually, and you've all heard it. Oh, is he on? Can he hear us? Can he see us? Where's he? And literally, that is every meeting in our life. It does my head in. It does my head in. So, but that aside, I think that that if we create the right opportunity, that the talent will come. That we can find the talent, and that talent's global.
Can I just follow on from that question?
Sure.
Would you consider?
Maybe. Yeah, go on.
Would you consider dispersed teams?
Yes.
Yeah.
And indeed, we think we'll pick the business up at some point. The core team, or those of us that are willing to travel, and go and move the business to the US. That's our big market. Western Europe and US is our big market, and at some point, this East Coast, West Coast, US to Perth thing's a disaster. Graham's involved in another business where the CEO actually moved to Auckland because they actually put him in a better time zone. I have some mates in New Zealand, and I love Kiwis, but I think I'd rather go and live in San Diego than. But when you get to the US, you realise that the big challenge there is about moving yourself around within the country. It's really hard. It's just traffic and airports and stuff. So if we need to, we'll move the business.
But would you hire from Perth a developer?
Hell yeah.
From another
Hell yeah.
city?
So we did a deal with Bentley Systems the other day. Bentley's like sort of the Holden and Ford Autodesk and Bentley. They're kind of two things. The head of reality modelling globally for Bentley lives in Perth. He works out of Freo, and he sold his business to Bentley 3 or 4 years ago. He heads the global reality modelling team. He's got software engineers in India. He's got sales guys in Western Europe. He's got sales guys in North America, and that's his life. So other people have trod that path. I think we just need to execute it well.
We use Zoom every day, and
Yeah.
it seems to work. So
Zoom's better than
Yes.
most.
Is that Ring Central?
No.
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 Right.
Zoom.us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good advice. I'll
Yeah.
try that one. We haven't tried that one.
Bit of advice for those of you not using it. It
Yeah.
does seem to work.
Do you know what the common theme is? We always end up picking the phone and dialing the bloody other cell phone.
Yeah.
Because the latency on the voice can be really painful.
And then everyone leans over the phone
That's
going,
it.
"Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" All right, so we started the discussion earlier, so we could finish the discussion earlier, which I don't think we've
Not
really.
even 8.
Well, it's almost 8 o'clock. So we're here till